Hey everyone, Cayna here. In this video, I'm talking about Legion from a raider perspective, how it felt as a hardcore raider, good things and bad things each tier, giving you my overall thoughts on the expansion on the whole from a raiding perspective. I just want to make sure to state the obvious that this is of course the opinion piece, and I would love to hear below in the comments what you agree and disagree on, including your own take on Legion as a whole. Let's get into the video. For every hardcore raider, the release of an expansion is a very important part. And this is where our grind starts, with multiple characters being leveled and all the plans that we prepped from playing Alpha and Beta to put into motion. There really is no better time to be a raider. The release of Legion was super smooth with the least lag I've experienced. The zones were quick and at a good pace, and I personally did not find them annoying at all. The bonus objectives were worth doing, and the class was not very hard to keep up with. Overall, from a leveling perspective, I really enjoyed how Legion turned out, and stood out more than most expansions. However, the real downside of Legion from a hardcore raider point of view were the systems added, namely artifact power, legendaries, and titan forging. With Heroic Emerald Nightmare and Mythic Plus being released in week 3, and Mythic being released in week 4, the original plan for Method was 5 characters, and some people would level multiple characters of one class, me for example, while others leveled 5 different classes. The bonus to leveling multiple of one was the legendary rule. I personally leveled 3 shamans, 1 demon hunter and a feral. The first issue ended up being legendaries. I know in fact over the course of the expansion, multiple method raiders rerolled to an alt of the same class because it got a better legendary. Examples being me, Andrew and later on even Scribe or raid leader. From a raider perspective, this was incredibly frustrating, knowing I've put so many hours of hard work into the game on that one specific character, then only have it thrown away by RNG of a legendary drop on an alt, over what I would consider my main. Also the imbalance of legendaries was extremely poor. Think Fire Mace Bracers, Shadow Priest Belt Bracers, and how bad Price and Sabbaths were at the start. Put that alongside the 4 legendary cap that happened early on, and the obtain your second legendary really easy bug that happened early on as well. Overall, I think legendaries in the early expansion were extremely disappointing. I know at least from my class, we gave a high amount of feedback on the balance, and still in release, only 2 or 3 legendaries would be useful. However, they did change it up later by a lot. Currently, when watching for example Mythic Plus, the amount of legendary combinations available are very pleasant to see, and I do enjoy the min-max part in terms of them. I also have to say they found a very good fix for Prides and Savas being global legendaries. They're wanted, but not 100% bis in all situations. The later issue became Titan Forging. Around 4 days before Heroic Week, week 3, Blizzard made it so that Mythic Plus can't Titan Forge past 850 item level, basically reducing the effect of farming Mythic Plus on your main and increasing the effect of splits. With a quick guild meeting, we decided almost 2 weeks into the expansion, a 6th character was needed. But even during Heroic Week, Mythic Plus farm was still very much worth it, as every trait that you obtained uses both your damage and survivability. This made it to the point there was no cap, and it showed the most hardcore players out there. For example, the average traded method was around 25 in this time, while for example Noga, who played Hunter, got 27. And with the result of Emerald Nightmare being over in 1 day, I'm pretty sure this was the most disappointing start of an expansion for the hardcore raider. Again, knowing we put in all the time and effort into the grinding and working on something just to be let down. I do still think Emerald Nightmare was overall a fun tier. Some bosses were mechanically interesting, especially Il'gynoth and Cenarius were fun to play. Just the overall shooting and saviors were a bit of a letdown. The follow-up to Emerald Nightmare was Thrall of Valor, both being the best and the worst part of the expansion for me personally. The artifact grind of Thrall of Valor was the hardest out of all of them. The 35th trait gave you a flat 5% damage increase. This is also where the Maw of Souls carry run started. The farm for this one came quite late, as most people did not expect to be able to reach it, but once a couple of people did the math and figured out you could, the grind really started. Now, with farming I mean 7 to 8 hours minimum each day. And for people who had a job like me, this was not something you could complete in time. Method also made this a non-requirement, but that really just goes to show the amount of time and effort that goes into being hardcore raiding. The other issue was the 4 legendary cap, where for a good amount of time you were not able to receive more than 4 legendaries. Me being lucky, I got my 2 best in slot, while plenty of others managed to loot 3 or 4 useless ones. When we found out about this cap, this was of course a massive frustration, as we actively farmed these without being able to get them and knowing about it. However, after all of this, Thrall of Valor still turned out to be one of the best raids in my opinion. Very short but well tuned. Odin being harder bosses than most bosses in ML Nightmare, Thorn being a big check for both healers and DPS, and Helya being one of my favorite bosses in Legion. Titan Forging also became less of an issue in Thrall of Valor, as Helya dropped max item level items. The farm for Thrall of Valor was decently chill, with a couple of Emerald Nightmare splits and maximum 2 Thrall of Valor splits. Next up is Nighthold, in my opinion the highlight of Legion raiding. Unless you were extremely unlucky, you should have had one of your better legendaries by now. Of course a couple of people were still missing their best in slots, but overall it did feel a lot better. The artifact farm also got a lot better. Farming up your main spec to 54 traits was a requirement we had in Method, and it was relatively easy to achieve, around 250 mob soul runs. Personally, I went for 2 specs to 54, and some extreme people, knowing for example Deep Shades, managed to farm up 3 specs to 54. Nighthold length was very well done, taking a weekend and a half to complete. The bosses were tuned hard but not impossible, with Elisand being my number 1 boss of the expansion. She had a mechanic check, coordination check, and a DPS check all in one, and my only complaint is being that she was 2 and 3 healed. The farm for Nighthold was extreme, as most people caught up to the legendary blast of doing all content. This means LFR, normal and heroic and mythic of each tier, also doing all mythic zeros that there is. Mythic splits also went insane, to the point where in the last weeks we were running 7 mythic splits. At the end of Nighthold is where people who actively farmed their legendaries started hitting the cap of all legendaries. I myself only had 1 elemental one left and a couple of restoration ones, but I know for example people like Jinji and Naga who had legendaries for all specs. Overall, as mentioned, Nighthold was my favorite tier in terms of raiding. Well designed bosses, good tuning, and only 1 boss that was annoying, Botanist. But even that was mostly because of the amount of trash it took to get there. It was a very active tier with a lot of farming, but still came out on top for me. Next up, Tomb of Sagaris. Artifact farming felt extremely nice. Once you reached the max amount of trades, you only really had to farm a Concordance. And as Concordance was not a massive DPS increase, the requirement was to just farm up all trades and the first level of it. Also legendaries were mostly being farmed and only 2 new legendaries were added. But because they were added a week before Tomb of Sagaris got released, it was very easy to farm them up before the mythic race. Overall, Tomb of Sagaris had massive issues on release, in both Avatar and Kil'jaeden being broken on release, massive class stacking being required, especially in terms of rogues, and frustrating bosses in Maiden who would just one-shot your raid if anyone made a mistake. Also the fact Mistress got cheesed and then made harder to fix the cheese pissed some guilt off. Tomb was my least favorite tier this expansion overall. Even though, at the end of the tier, Kil'jaeden and Avatar became decent fights to play, the fact it lasted 3+ weeks and the original state left a sour taste in most raiders' their mouth. Outside of Tomb, there were 2 more issues that did not help the tier. One being, raid testing came extremely early. After 3 weeks of playing a tier, you want to take a small break from the game, which unfortunately we did not get. Right after the tier, raid testing for Atara started. Now, you know it's early when guilds like Method decide to skip testing, because they want a break from the game. Second being that the MDI got released shortly after as well. I like Mythic Plus and the MDI was a very cool thing to see. However, it was released too quickly. Trying to qualify with raiders from top 5 guilds was the most frustrating thing, as most of them were raiding every day, and you just had no time to practice. The first MDI would have been a lot cooler if it came a month later, as most hardcore players who would have wanted to qualify were done at that point. Then the final tier of the expansion, Antares the Burning Throne. With no new legendaries added and a requirement of 75 traits that you farm passively, I managed to farm 7 specs to 75 traits before progress, without feeling like I had to farm an insane amount, maybe 2 to 4 hours each of world questing. The prep for Antares because this was very chill, only mythic splits you really had to worry about. Antares overall felt like a meh to okay tier. It lasted just longer than a week, but that's because of the hard tuning on Argus. First issue being that the first 9 bosses were a complete walkover. Within 20 hours of the tier being released for EU, Egamar died to Method, while normally the second to last boss dies around the weekend or just after the weekend, in the first week. The final issue being that Argus became an immunity stacking fight because of the ways how chains of Zagaras worked. I have to say I do currently enjoy killing Argus, as the boss did not receive many nerfs and it still feels like you have to play the boss, but you just kill it faster. Rather than Kil'jaeden, where they nerfed all the mechanics to be half. Antares overall is an okay tier to farm, but definitely not my favorite tier. Overall, I do rate Legion as a good expansion. There was a lot to do, while sometimes it went overboard, and I did wish Blizzard listened better to the feedback regarding legendaries early on. It all worked out in the end, and even the latest legendary and artifact farms were really chill. It required you to play the game, but nothing to a level none can do. In terms of the tier, best to worst for me in Legion, I would say number 1 Nighthold, number 2 Thrall of Valor, number 3 Ataris, number 4 Emerald Nightmare, and number 5 Tomb of Zagaras. That about rounds up everything I have to say about Legion. If you're curious about any of my opinions on BFA and want to see an opinion video again, if you enjoyed this whenever it's about shamans or anything else, let me know in the comments below. If you enjoyed this video, remember to hit the like button and subscribe, enabling notifications to never miss out on Method content. Again, this was Cayna from Team Method. You can find me at twitch.tv/Cayna, and all links for me are in the video description. Thanks for watching and have a great day.